We're live.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting for Monday, January the 24th. We have a three-part meeting this evening. We have Fiddleville Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board meeting first, followed by a Committee of Adjustment meeting, and then finally on to our regular council agenda. So we'll get started with the Fiddleville Board meeting. We'll call that meeting to order. Quorum has been established. Are there any conflict of interest declarations by any board member? Don't see any. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the September 27th meeting? Moved by board member Bonato, seconded by board member Fegan.
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor? It's carried. Okay. Trevor, do you want to do the financial report?
Absolutely. Okay, if you'd like to turn to page 8 of the financial statements, or sorry, the board report, the handwritten number 8. I'll go through the balance sheet. This is our year end, December 31st, 2021. It's unaudited, so there will be adjustments made obviously by the year end. In the operating account, we have $156,000. In the reserve funds, we have $87,000 there, which is actually $94,000 more than we should have. So technically that $87,000 should be back in our bank account because we have an operating surplus, but as you can see, the total reserve funds are down to negative $7,000. So, you know, we operate very efficiently. We do get funding set up from the province through the county of Dufferin, where we get so much a year. At this point, we've depleted it fully. The way we do capital repairs at this point, we're borrowing from the bank account, so to speak. I do want to mention that this is a concern, although again, we do have technically $220,000 in cash available to us. But other areas, I know there's a representative on this council who goes to Dufferin and represents us there, represents the town of Shelburne. But other areas have adopted a process of lending money to the nonprofits. So our agreement expires in 4 years. And what they're doing is maybe lending $250,000 for capital. And then you start repaying it in 4 years, you know. So anyways, at this point, we do have $220,000 of cash available, but technically our reserve is at zero, at negative $7,000. Tenants accounts receivable. It's creeping up a little bit. Donna, you mentioned there's going to be attached a delinquency update. Is that correct?
There is, it's on page 11.
Page 11, I apologize. On the report. Okay, so if you flip to page 11, you'll see, if you look at this is the delinquency. Over 60 days, we have $2,600 and then $4,100. It's basically comprised of one person. We have a hearing date for February 1st. Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to evict at this point. But the hearings are very slow to come by because of COVID. They've had a backlog in the tribunal, but we are proceeding there. We don't want to evict people, but that person is dire in need, you know, behind in their rent. At some point, they're not really making, I wouldn't say not making efforts, but certainly the last payment date, see on the right there, it says 11/12/21. So the last payment was over a month ago. So anyways, we'll proceed there on your behalf reasonably. If they make arrangements with us, we will enter into a payment plan to help them get out of this situation because we don't want to evict people. Like, you know, it's just, you have to be practical too, that if you're not paying rent, there's not a lot we can do.
Sorry, Trevor, can't they be moved to the other?
Dufferin?
Yeah. If they can't pay the rent, there's a reason maybe behind that. And
Donna, do you know the client to speak to that?
I've got the client up on the computer here, and the county did help them out about a year ago and gave them money to catch up. Then they fall behind for a couple months or 3 months, and then they make payments, and then they make a payment plan. But it's never enough. It just keeps creeping up more and more and more. So it is inevitable that we have to do something. Hopefully they will enter into a reasonable payment plan when we go to court next week.
But as you notice, there's $6,700 behind, which is half of our rental arrears. Like they owe as much themselves as the entire 45 units. So again, I empathize, I feel sorry, and we'll do what we can, but we also just have to, do it reasonable. So, we will see if they can come into a payment plan, as Donna says.
Well, I'm sorry, again, Trevor.
Yep.
Is it possible to speak to the county one more time, maybe to social services or something, and find out what, like I said, there has to be a reason why they're not able to pay. It's the people that, as a general rule, don't want to get evicted or lose their accommodation. So maybe speak to the county and find out if they can assist them again, and maybe put them in social services or some form so that they do have enough money to at least make that reasonable payment plan.
Absolutely. And the county has an unofficial policy once a year, so it's not impossible. They'll go visit the county again and come up with some money, because again, that's our last resort, but that's a lot of money owing. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's like 4.5 months, 5 months of rent in arrears.
And this is where the paralegal will mediate with them and try and work something else out. So we will and we do respect that. We do expect that would be fair to say that's the board's desire, always not to evict. So we would proceed along that lines. Our nonprofits traditionally are always.
I'm thinking they're gonna record it.
Sorry.
It says on you can watch it on the YouTube channel.
Right. Jennifer, could you mute the public members that are signed on? Thank you. Sorry about that, Trevor.
Actually, before Trevor goes on, I just want to pick up, if I may, off of Bonato's questions. When we are proceeding to court, we are now retaining the services of a paralegal. Is that cost typically borne by us, or is that passed on to the resident as part of the negotiated payment arrangement?
They've been charged some legal fees already, but the brunt of it is the corporation.
Okay, so do we have some sort of fund that we tap into, or this coming out of reserves? Like, I'm assuming that this doesn't happen too often, but when you say that we bear the brunt of it, is there money that's typically set aside for these types of situations?
Trevor, do you want to speak to that? We do have a budget line for legal. Because this does come up more than than we'd like to see, but there are certain charges that we can apply onto the account, but the paralegal itself is the cost of the corporation. So under your budget, there is a line for legal. I'm not sure, did we lose Trevor?
Looks like we have, yeah.
It is fine. The question was answered. Thank you very much, Donna.
Okay. Do you want to pick up then, Donna, on the rest of the financial statement?
Okay. So we're back to page 8. And just following past the accounts receivable down to due from the county. Due from the county is the subsidy, and the subsidy is paid on the 1st. So this always shows as a negative until the next month when we receive the check from the county. HST receivable, we receive approximately 80% of the HST. Prepaid expenses, your insurance. Going down, you have building land, and there's the as we've discussed before, the the sheep. Those are all loans that were given by the county, and they have a 10-year timeline before they are cleared off the account. Current year-end trade payables, those are just items that were crossed over from the one year to the next, such as your hydro, your gas, things like that were paid in January of 2021 that reflected in 2022. These are the unaudited statements of December 2021. Accrued liabilities of $4,900, Alamar interest So all the residents have paid an LMR, a last month's rent, and there is interest being accrued on that last month's rent. Mortgage payable, interest payable, and again, offsetting the column up above, the SHRP sheep and the SHIP loans. LMR deposits, I spoke of the interest, so we have 24,674 sitting in the last month's rent deposit, and we've earned the 1,400 interest on that money. Due to county and due to the reserve operating, which is up above that Trevor spoke of at the beginning of this. So
Donna?
first,
No,
yes?
sorry to interrupt. On the accrued last month rent interest, does the corporation gets that, or do the residents get that?
It gets applied to the residents,
Okay, thank you.
and it's equal to what the rent increase guideline is. So for instance, for 2022, it's 1.2%, and that's what we can charge as an interest on their last month's rent.
Great, that you answered my question. I just wondered who got the interest. Thank you.
So first mortgage payable, 1,112,000. So at this point in time, you have retained earnings of $186,000.
Donna, does it make any sense to transfer any, cash from those retained earnings, so Trevor's back, into the reserve account?
We did move some money over recently. At our last board, we did get direction to move money over, and we have moved money over. Sorry, I just can't access anything right now. I apologize. Country cable is frustrating. I'm just seeing how much we followed the direction the last board meeting. We were given the direction to move money over.
I'm just looking up
Yep.
the
Me too. But yeah, it does make sense from the board's perspective to move some more money over to operating from the capital account, because we do earn some interest there. So would it make sense to get direction to move $50,000 more from the bank account to the reserve? Nobody can hear me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll make that motion, Wade.
yes.
If that helps.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Board Member Fegan. Okay, any discussion on that?
So Trevor, do you want to, are we moving it into long-term, short-term?
My recommendation, we've traditionally moved in, what we do is move it, there's bonds and there's equities, and the one goes up, the one goes down. So traditionally we've gone 50-50 into the equities and 50% into the bonds. Would that be acceptable? Because if the equities are down this week in the last couple of weeks, but then the bonds have gone up. That's why the equities are down. So, and so traditionally that's what we've done, like with other corporations as well. You just divide it up.
All right. Any discussion on that motion then? All in favor?
Can I just back up? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who seconded that.
Member Fegan. Bonato and Fegan. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that carried. Any further questions on the financial statements? Can I get a motion to approve those then? Member Hall, second by Member Bonato. All in favor? That's carried. All right, property management report.
Very little has transpired since the last meeting of September 27th. So we've only had one vacancy. And then I also attached the work order summary of all of the trades that have been on the property since that date of, this goes from September 23rd to January 20th. If there's any questions, that's page 7.
Any questions for Donna? Okay. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Oh, Member Wagner.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm not sure if this would be the area to ask the question, but I know we discussed about, we got a quote for the roofs to be replaced. So I'm just making sure that that is sort of on schedule to take place maybe in the spring. Is there a timeline when the, I think it was 15 roofs in total that were going to be replaced?
They're all done.
Oh, they're done already. Okay, great.
They're done.
Perfect.
Everything's complete. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. That's great news.
Okay, anything else for Donna?
Donna, can you pass on to the residents that they did a wonderful job with Christmas decorations? When we did pass by there, it was really nice to see it. And I think we should thank those that did the work from the board that, you know, all the work and what they did for Christmas, I think should be appreciated on our behalf.
Already done. I've already done that. And the one gentleman that did a lot of the work, I don't know if you've noticed the nutcracker that was in front of one of the units.
Yeah, I did.
He made that himself.
Wow.
Like, fabulous. And I've extended to them again. Thank you. And I, on behalf of the board, and said that, you know, how lovely it is that they've all taken ownership and then really trying to make it a home. And that we would also be willing to contribute again to money spent in the summer, in the spring, for flowers and things like that.
I think after all that they've done, that's the least we can do is to assist them with that, especially that crafty gentleman that is able to do all those wonderful things that he does.
Yes, he's done a great job of all seasons going. Yes.
If I may just pick up on that, Chairman Mills, I wonder, Member Bonato, if it'd be a nice gesture, if I may put it this way, to maybe provide some sort of certificate on the behalf of the board to this gentleman. If he is an individual has been identified as doing some outstanding work and has been doing this for a number of years, that might be a nice gesture where on the behalf of the board, we could award him something for his efforts.
I was thinking, I don't know the name of the gentleman, but I would like to see him get the Community Excellence Award from the town. Yeah. I think that's a certificate that would be due to him. If Donna can provide us some little bit of information on him, we'll recommend him for the Shelburne, the Town of Shelburne Excellence Award, and have him maybe come to a meeting at some point or virtually or whatever, and be presented with it by the mayor with a medal.
Awesome.
Is that something you can provide, Donna?
Oh, I can deal with Jennifer and give her the information. I do want to clearly, he is the 90%, but there are other residents that have put in some effort as well. But he basically was 90% of even the Veterans Day, the Halloween, everything.
He would seem to me to be a worthy recipient.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Can I get a motion then to approve the property management report? Buffett, seconded by Wagner. All in favor? Carried. Any new business tonight?
We have nothing.
Okay. Anything from any board member? No. Okay, date of next meeting.
3 months from now, so April 15th or so, or March.
What's our
April 11th or 25th?
Let's go to 26. I actually have an official plans to travel April 1st, knock on wood, right?
So April 25th. 25th.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, thank you both.
And I apologize I talked for 2 minutes after I realized I wasn't being heard, so.
It's all right. I think we've all been there, so can certainly relate. All right. So with that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Hall, seconded by Bernardo. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, great. Thank you all.
Good night.
Right.
Back in April. All right, so next up is the Committee of Adjustment meeting. So I will call that meeting to order. There is only one application on the agenda for this evening. And as it turns out, I have to declare a pecuniary interest with respect to that matter. The applicant is a client of mine. So with that, I will turn the chair over to Vice Chair Anderson, and I will take my leave.
Thank you, Chairman Mills. And I presume that there is nobody else that has a conflict to declare. And if they do, I ask that you do that verbally and also to provide that in writing. If not, it would appear that we do have obviously quorum to continue. So with that, let me call this to order. Actually, Chairman Mills already did that already. So here's what we have. So tonight we have a public meeting being held under Section 53 of the Planning Act to consider two consent applications. Consent application B21/05 and B21/06 is a property located on 220 Owen Sound Street in the town of Shelburne. The purpose and effect of the application of B21/05 is to sever a portion of the property to have a land area of 307.88 square meters and 19.81 meters of frontage on 2nd Avenue West to create a new residential lot for a future semi-detached dwelling. The applicant has submitted a related application, which is B21/06, to further sever the proposed lot of B21/05 so that each unit of the proposed semi-detached dwelling will be on a separate lot. The proposed several land and retained land would be equal size, each having an area of 150.5 square meters and 9.9 meters of frontage on 2nd Avenue West, and each is proposed to be used for for semi-detached units, excuse me. So at this point, I will ask the clerk for the method of notice for tonight's meeting.
Notice of tonight's public meeting was advertised in local media sources. Notice is posted on the Town of Shelburne website, and property owners within a 60-meter radius have received notification.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so we have Steve Weaver, our planner, who is with us now. I can't see you, Steve, so I presume that you are there. And when you're ready, if you could provide an overview of your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Anderson. And good evening, everybody. Good to be with you in 2022. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
And my video is on. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I do have a fulsome report that we've provided in the agenda package. We've addressed both applications in the same report because they apply to the same property. A separate decision for each application is required. They do relate, obviously. So I have a slideshow set up, and we'll just provide some graphics on the subject property and some of the details of the application. I appreciate that there are a few members of the public in attendance tonight, and some have submitted comments, which I will go through as well, because they were provided after the agenda was circulated. And I see that the owner of the property, Jeff Hamilton, who is the applicant on these two applications, is also here. Give me a moment while I share presentation. Did that come up okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is an air photo of the subject property. As we know, it's located at the southwest corner of 2nd Avenue West and Owen Sound Street. There is an existing historical home on the property. It's situated in kind of the easterly part of the property seen here. This is the roof, if you can see my cursor. It fronts on Owen Sound Street and also has an exterior side facing 2nd Avenue. To the south are a couple of single detached dwellings as well. I will note that there was a fire that affected the existing home a couple of years ago. As part of the restoration by the current owner, the back part that was a later addition to the dwelling has in fact been removed. So this rectangular piece you see here on the air photo is no longer on the dwelling. The air photo is just a bit dated. This detached garage at the back of the property is not original to the home either, but it does still exist. And that's where originally the parking for the units in the existing house was provided. That does still exist, and parking is certainly still available there. However, the owner has created a new driveway and 6 parking spaces in about this location in anticipation of the severance application and as part of the restoration of the existing house contained 6 apartments initially or originally for many years, 6 independent units. We're not sure of the date of creation of all those units or if it was originally built that way. But the owner has restored the dwelling and reduced the number of units within the house to 3. So there's 1 apartment essentially per level. It's basically a 2.5-story house, and there's 1 apartment on each level for a total of 3 units. The dash line that we've shown here is approximately the boundary of the first severed lot that would be created. So obviously with the severance of a new lot for a new dwelling, the existing detached garage would have to be removed. Just a couple of photos. The existing house, this is after the restoration work, a very signature dwelling in the town. It does not have a specific heritage designation or is not designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, but certainly one of the more recognizable homes in the community with the frontage on Owen Sound Street and given its age. This is an older photo from Google Street View of the garage at the back. I think it still more or less looks like this, but this is the garage building that, as I say, would need to be removed. And this is this parking area and garage is where the new proposed semi-detached dwelling would be located if the applications are approved. I mentioned the rear addition that was subsequently removed after the fire. That's this wood structure here. So that is no longer there. And that has been replaced with parking in that area. Just a quick note on the area context. I'm sure most are familiar being from the neighborhood or on the committee. The area is generally characterized by predominantly single detached homes. There are a couple of, a few semi-detached and converted dwellings in the neighborhood as well. The north edge of the downtown actually goes right up to 2nd Avenue as designated in the official plan. So that the property is technically within the downtown core as delineated in the OP. And you can see obviously the core area located further south between 1st Ave and Main Street, which is just off the map. There are some institutional uses in the area as well. There's a church to the south and to the north as well, with the dwelling that goes with the church to the north, post office to the east, and the institutional, or sorry, the library to the southeast. We looked at the zoning of the area as well, just to get a sense of the neighborhood and what kind of dwellings are permitted. We've identified, just based on air photo review and our knowledge of recent planning approvals in the last few years, where there are some existing semi-detached dwellings or converted dwellings in the area. So there's a couple on 1st Avenue, one to the south on Owen Sound Street, a semi-detached. In recent years, there have been severances to the east along 2nd Avenue, both for a property fronting William Street and another property fronting Owen Sound Street. The new dwelling constructed on this severed lot is a 2-unit dwelling, and the existing dwelling was converted to 3 units, so across the street from the subject property. And then, of course, the subject property is proposed for another semi-detached dwelling. We've just shown that in blue, approximately the location. And the existing house on the property has 3 units, as I mentioned. So there is a bit of a mix I will also note that everywhere you see the R2 zone and the R4 zone, which applies to the subject property, that whole area permits single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and converted dwellings. So all of those types of dwellings generally can coexist harmoniously together. They're similar in terms of their appearance from the street, generally in their footprint and size, and it's not unusual to find those types of dwellings together in the same neighborhood. And you can also see that the lot sizes vary quite significantly, from this very large lot adjoining the church to the north to some much smaller, narrower lots, for example, over on First Avenue. This is a survey that was provided by the applicant. So the first application, which is B2105, would create this new lot outlined in red. So it's basically the area surrounding the existing detached garage. That lot would be 301 square meters in area. It would have frontage on 2nd Avenue. And the retained lot, which houses the existing historical home, would be this size and shape. So it would be smaller with less of a backyard, but still a rear yard behind the existing home where the parking is provided for the existing 3 units. And then we did a zoning review of each application. So for the first application, as I mentioned, the property is zoned R4. In the R4 zone, the minimum lot area for a single detached dwelling, which is the largest type of dwelling permitted in the zone, is 300 square meters. The proposed lot area is 301 square meters, so basically aligned to the zoning requirement. The minimum lot frontage, again, for a single detached, which is the largest frontage required, is 9.75 meters, and the proposed is 19.81. So this would be a wider lot and not as deep, but it would meet those 2 lot requirements under the zoning bylaw. Now, because the lot wouldn't be as deep, a rezoning will be required to establish the minimum yard requirements. So front yard, rear yard, side yards for the new semi-detached dwelling or single detached dwelling, depending on what's built, the maximum coverage of the lot, and the maximum building height requirement. The second application, B2106, would take that severed lot that was shown previously and break it into 2. So each lot, the severed lot in the second application would be 150.5 square meters, and the retained lot would also be 150.5 square meters. Basically, a house, semi-detached house, is proposed to be built straddling the boundary between those 2 new lots. The 2 units would be attached, and each unit would reside on its own property, so they could be separately owned. Very much the same as most semi-detached dwellings that you see in town. So we've reviewed the zoning for the second severance as well. The minimum lot area in the R4 zone for a semi-detached dwelling is 270 square meters for each unit or each lot. The proposed lot area is quite a bit smaller than that, so 150.5 square meters. The minimum lot frontage is 9.75 meters, and the proposed would meet that. So again, the lot area is smaller because the lot isn't as deep as what the zoning bylaw anticipates in terms of the minimum lot area. However, it would be as wide as the zoning bylaw requires with 9.9 meters per unit for lot frontage. I've mentioned again, for the second severance, a rezoning is required to establish the yard requirements, the maximum coverage, and the maximum building height, as well as to propose the minimum lot area or to allow that with a site-specific zoning. The applicant, before filing the application, had found this image as an example of a kind of Victorian style or appropriately styled architecture that they felt they could potentially use as an example to illustrate how a semi-detached dwelling might be integrated into the area. It hasn't been determined if this specific model would fit on the property or would need to be modified based on the property dimensions, but this is an image that the applicant provided, just again as an example how a new home could be built in a way that is respectful to the character of the homes in the area. This image is actually from Rosehaven Homes. So that's not the proposed home builder here, but the applicant did find this image and provided it as an example. So a few policy considerations. This is all provided in detail in my report. The property is at the north edge of the downtown core. It is part of the designated mixed-use corridor on Owen Sound Street. It's within the built boundary and the urban boundary. And what all of that means is that There is policy direction in the town's official plan, as well as the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and the Dufferin County official plan that support and direct intensification to these areas in or near the downtown, areas within, arterial road corridors, such as along Owen Sound Street, and areas within the existing built-up area and the urban area. Why do policies direct housing to an existing built-up area? There's a few reasons for that. It helps to reduce land consumption and servicing costs. There's a need for more housing. I'm sure you're all seeing a lot of media coverage of that recently. In particular, housing prices are going up because there's not enough supply to meet demand. Helps to provide more housing options. The properties within walking distance to the downtown and core area, and would help to optimize the use of existing infrastructure. So you don't have to build new water and sewer and stormwater management systems for a property like this. You can just connect to the existing systems. There are criteria that have to be considered and carefully evaluated in this kind of proposal. And this is what we've done in our report. So I won't go into detail in the presentation on each of these items, but definitely servicing capacity needs to be approved for the new unit. There is some limited allocation remaining as outlined in my report. And these types of infill projects have slowly reduced that reserve capacity. So we are recommending that the owner be required to enter into an agreement with the town and get approval from the town engineer prior to any building permits for the servicing allocation. Public road access is required, and that's provided on the property. Sufficient parking is required, and that's again provided for the existing 3 units with 6 parking spaces. And for the new units, 2 parking spaces will be provided for each unit. So an attached garage and a driveway for each unit. There's some criteria around making sure that the house is well designed, that it fits with the neighborhood, that it's appropriate scale and character, that the natural environment is protected and natural hazards are avoided. We have consulted with the NVCA through this process. The Conservation Authority has advised there are no concerns with respect to the natural environment and natural hazards for the subject property because it's not within any environmental features or near any hazardous areas. Conserving heritage resources, I've mentioned that already, that the house obviously is a significant built heritage resource in the town. It isn't designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, but the owner has restored it, is planning to keep the house. And I think it's now important that any new dwellings built on the severed lots be sensitively designed in keeping with the heritage character of the area. And that's what we're recommending. And then finally, tree retention and replacement is also required. There aren't any new trees that would require removal for the proposed severed lot. So conditions of approval that we've outlined for the committee's consideration on both of these applications. These are all standard conditions. The one that I will highlight here is that a zoning bylaw amendment will be required, as I've outlined, to establish the yards and setback requirements. There'll be another public meeting required for that application in future that has not been filed yet. So that would be later on if the consent is conditionally approved, that would occur later. And then all of those conditions have to be satisfied within 2 years. The Planning Act was amended and starting January 1st of this year, applicants now have 2 years to satisfy condition, whereas before the end of or the beginning of January, it was 1 year. For the second application, again, this is dividing that severed lot into 2, so that each unit's on its own lot. Same conditions, with the added condition that the first severance, B2105, also has to be approved before the second one can be approved. So they go together. B2105 could be approved just to create the 1 lot, but B2106 should not be approved unless B2105 is approved first. I've mentioned the requirement for the zoning bylaw. I'm recommending that as part of that zoning bylaw amendment application, the applicant be required to confirm and justify the proposed lot and building standards. So the yards, the coverages, the setbacks, et cetera, that the building design be addressed and to make sure it's in keeping with the heritage policies of the town's official plan, and that measures be identified to protect the privacy of the rear yard of the adjoining lot to the south. So one of the concerns that has been raised is that, if I can skip back quickly here, is that building a house here could have, windows on the rear. It could be a 2-story dwelling, and that would provide potentially some overlook and privacy concerns for the rear yard here. So we'd want to work with the applicant there to determine how they would mitigate that, whether it be some new fencing or the design and height of the new house, or how far set back it is from that lot line, to make sure that that's mitigated to the extent possible. So in terms of next steps, this is the last slide. I'll just quickly outline what else is required here. So if a decision is rendered by the committee tonight, there'll be a notice to the applicant and anyone who requests notice of the committee's decision. That has to be issued within 15 days of the meeting. Following the notice, there is an appeal period. So anyone who participated in the process or objected, or the applicant, if they don't like the conditions or any or the decision, they can appeal within 20 days of the notice. If approved, all conditions have to be satisfied by the owner within 2 years. A zoning bylaw amendment will be required before final approval, so that will have another separate public meeting and notice involved. Once all of the conditions are satisfied, a consent certificate would be prepared and issued for both lots. And then the applicant then has another 2 years to register the lot. So in total, the process could take upwards of 4 years, but it could happen much sooner than that, depending on how fast the owner advances these approvals and clears the conditions. When ready to build, servicing allocation would first need to be confirmed. A building permit application would then need to be filed. And after obtaining approvals for that, there would be lot grading, servicing, and construction to complete the dwelling. So before we wrap up, I do have some public comments that I need to summarize for the committee. In my report, I've outlined the agency responses that we've received. The Heritage Committee has not seen this application yet. I wanted to make the Committee of Adjustment aware of that. However, that's because the Heritage Committee was not able to meet, or didn't have quorum to meet in the circulation period. So what we're recommending is that once we have more information about the building design, and once we have a zoning application, that would be circulated to the Heritage Committee, and we would seek the Heritage Committee comments at that time. And again, that would be required prior to final approval of the zoning, of the both the zoning and the consents. I've outlined all the other agency responses. In short, none of the agencies have identified any concerns. There are some servicing requirements there to maintain a connection for the existing house to the sanitary system, and to create a new sanitary connection for the new proposed semi-detached dwelling. So those would be addressed in a legal agreement between the town and the owner to make sure that's done to the town's satisfaction. Okay, and then I have the public comments, so let me just stop sharing my screen before I review those. So we received a number of public submissions. First one is from Michael Williams. And this summary letter says, "Good afternoon. I'm writing this email to oppose the 3 houses that have been proposed to be built on the property at 220 Owen Sound Street. I own the house next to the property. I have lived at 216 Owen Sound Street for about 15 years. I have lived in Shelburne for the last 23 years. I purchased my home in Shelburne for the small town feel. With so many properties being severed, this town is losing its small town appeal. I myself am not at all happy to have 3 houses overlooking my backyard. These new houses will have no backyard due to the property being rather small. So in turn, this means the homes will have the dining room or living room windows overlooking my backyard. Also, due to the size of the property, this means the homes will have to be quite tall. This makes me feel uneasy when I have my preteen granddaughter and or my 6-year-old grandson, or even my granddaughters in the backyard. This is not what I wish to see be built in my next to my home. This will leave me with no choice but to sell my home, which I have worked so hard on over the years to fix up. Please take this email into consideration." So that's the first one. There's a submission from Laura Legree, and this is on behalf of her father, and that's the resident of 216. The concerns outlined in the submission indicate that Shelburne's a small community, and building houses in close like this takes away from the small town feel. That having those 3 houses potentially built with the back facing this way will take away from the privacy of the backyard, and for lots to the south as well. and that there are grandchildren who visit the property to the south that could be impacted in perspective of the author of these comments. So that's the second submission. We received one from, bear with me for a second, Beverly Ford Arnold and Harold Arnold. And this one, I won't read the whole thing. It's a few pages long. It summarizes some concerns with the application, including potential drainage issues and concerns, parking issues on 2nd Ave West, and the concern that there'd be problems with garbage, green and blue bin, yard waste, and leaf pickup. That there's concerns about safety issues for young children that are current and future users of the back lanes, that there needs to be provision for snow storage, and there's concern about that, as well as the drainage issues. Questions about why there are 2 units proposed in each of the homes, thus making 4 apartments, resulting in even more problems. And just some comments about the character and beauty of some of the heritage or historic homes in the area, some of the concerns about impacts about that. We received another submission, similar concerns from Hazel and Bruce Keating. And I apologize, I don't have their address. Oh, 121 2nd Ave West. Again, I won't read these letters because many of the comments are similar and concerns are similar. Jane and Dean Belrose have also submitted an email. They've indicated that they live on 2nd Ave West now for 27 years. They feel that adding a new house will not only not look like the town they moved to, but parking is going to be an issue. They commented on some of the changes that have been made downtown and what they see as a negative look to some of those buildings. And just because a building can be squeezed into a spot doesn't mean it should be. Then we received a submission from John Ruhlman and Juliet Ruhlman of 212 Owen Sound Street. Again, similar concerns: privacy, parking, waste, garbage, children's safety, snow removal, and historic charm. And they've elaborated on all of those concerns. And then finally, a follow-up letter email from Lisa Ruhlman of 212 Owen Sound Street, indicating that she's been there for 37 years, that there is water that runs down the back lane, that there are some rutting and quality concerns as it respects to the rear lane and the surface. She feels that that is becoming a hazarded situation. Is there not enough houses already? And is this just about making money? Just to summarize some of the concerns. So I'll stop there. I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure you had the full picture to assist in your decision. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve, for your report. Just before I open it up to the rest of the committee, let's make a few remarks, and I have maybe 1 or 2 questions, and then obviously we'll take those who are registered from the public to ask any questions that they have. So for me, Steve, a number of the issues or concerns that I initially had were answered in the report. For example, making sure that the new structure would maintain the sort of the character of the existing structure, and that it wasn't going to be completely off, because certainly that would have been a concern and potentially even an eyesore. I was also happy to hear that just because the Heritage Committee missed an opportunity to be consulted or to review this, it doesn't mean that that is passed and they're not going to have that opportunity. So I'm glad that was addressed. The question I have is pertaining to some of the concerns that were raised. You've already addressed that you'll be working with the owner, depending on how this goes, with respect to addressing the privacy issues. With respect to some of the concerns raised around safety, based on your review of the project and what you understand thus far, are there any concerns or immediate concerns that you have with respect to this project if it were to go forward?
I think we need some further information through the zoning process to address some of the comments and concerns that have been raised. The applications that are before you tonight are really just to seek conditional approval of creating these lots. Now, the siting of a house on the lots, the zoning standards that apply, the setbacks, making sure there's enough parking and snow storage area and areas for waste and yard areas for if there's kids in the dwellings for them to play, and amenity areas for the residents, fencing and privacy, screening, all of that. Those are all details that we can address through those subsequent steps. There's a lot more to be done here before there's any construction that can be contemplated. And those are not issues that are unique to this property. I would say that those are things that, you know, the smaller the lots, the larger the houses that you try to site on those lots, the more difficult it is to address those things. So we would ensure there are adequate yards and setbacks and everything to address all of those things through the next steps.
Okay, perfect. So I'll open it up to the committee if you have any questions of Steve before we turn to the public. And just a reminder to the committee that we do have a number of options that are available to us as it pertains to this report. As you know, in previous meetings, whether it's to approve with conditions, to defer, or to outright refuse. So just have that in mind, but I'll open up to the rest of the committee for any questions. Member Bonato, please go ahead.
Sorry, Vice Chair. Kyle was ahead of me.
Apologize, Kyle. I can't see you on there. So Member Kyle Fegan, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Steve, can you do me a favor and pull up the screen that you showed in regards to the second request? I'm looking in particular to the land lot size as per the requirements versus what they are requesting. Okay.
Did that come up?
That's the one I'm looking for. Thank you very much. Okay, so minimum lot area for semi-detached home as per the bylaw today requires 270 square meters, correct?
That's correct.
And they are proposing to have 150.5 square meters for these two semi-detached residences, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
That's almost 100 square meters per house or per residence. I personally have an issue with that much of a reduction. We've made exceptions on a lot of severances, but this is a significant request in my mind. I just wanted to point that out to the rest of the committee and make sure that everybody was aware of how much they are asking to reduce this by.
Okay, thank you, Member Fegan. Steve, you have a response or?
It's definitely something we thought a lot about as we prepared the report on this and worked with the applicant to intake their application and circulate it. One comment I will make is that the zoning standards are a little dated and quite a bit larger than you might see in most municipalities, even in smaller communities, for a semi-detached dwelling. And why I thought that this is not completely out of the norm, although it is on the smaller side, is a single detached dwelling could be built on a 300 square meter lot. And a semi-detached dwelling is basically the same thing with a wall down the middle separating it into two units. And so you have 150 meters per unit. And for a single detached, which would have a similar size, you would have 300. So the total is the same. Where I also, had some consideration of this is that there's more detail that will need to be provided. So how big is the rear yard going to be? What will the side yards be? How big will the house be as a result of accommodating all those things? Based on the plans that have been submitted, if it is a two-story dwelling, meeting reasonable yard requirements, you can still get about a 1,200 to 1,400 square foot home on each lot, 150 square meters each. So one thing I want the committee to bear in mind is that there is a movement towards allowing smaller homes or tiny homes. And it's a reaction in part to the housing affordability crisis. The fact that the larger the home, the larger the lot, the more expensive it is. So this does help to potentially overcome some affordability challenges. I'm not saying that the units will be meeting criteria for affordability. But certainly when you reduce the lot size and reduce the unit size, the price point comes down, which I think will help to fill a need. The last comment I would make is that if this stays as one lot, the province through the Planning Act has said to all municipalities, you have to make provision for a detached accessory dwelling on a standard single detached building lot. And that again lends itself to a smaller secondary unit in the rear yard of a property like this. You have to make sure that they address parking and all of those things, but with or without the severance, we considered that you could potentially build a fairly small house with similar setbacks in the back of this property, because that's, again, what the province is saying municipalities have to provide for. But we will be asking for more information to justify the standards that are proposed through the zoning process.
And Steve, just before Member Bonato goes, that would be part, if this were to be approved, part of the conditions, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So there'll be more information to be provided through the zoning process.
Okay, thank you. Member Bonato, please go ahead.
Okay, just a little more information on that house before I make some other comments. That house, if you read the report, mentioned that it was a Silk that owned it originally in the town. The son of that Silk was the commissioner of the OPP for the longest period of time. So that house has some significance in the town because of the residence that was in there. So that's to the heritage side of that house. The comments that I guess I'm going to make is I'm going to want to defer until more information has been provided. I'm kind of concerned about some of the residents. You mentioned the fact of privacy. You've mentioned the fact of a lot of things that you need information still. So I would rather defer this decision until we have some more of that information provided to us. It would make more sense to me to make the decision when we have the information that is still required than to sit here tonight and make a decision and then down the road, hopefully get the information that is required. I think the residents within the area, I've heard their concerns, and some of those concerns need to be addressed through that additional information that you're required. I hate to see a two-story house be built on that with windows, which I don't understand how you can't put windows in the back of a house, overlooking somebody else's backyard. So, those are just some of the concerns that the residents have, and they need to be addressed. And I don't want to make a decision in my mind until some of those concerns and information that is required has been provided to the committee. So that's just what I'm thinking at this point in time. That's it for me.
Thank you, Member Bonato. And we could certainly address that once we heard from the public. Now, I can't see everybody on screen. So for any other member that has a question, please just unmute. And if I don't hear anything in a second or two, then I will ask that we go to the members of the public who are registered. So if anybody else have any comments?
I do have just a couple.
Okay, Member Hall.
So very similar to Mr. Fegan, obviously the 2105 splitting it and creating the one separate lot, there's not much we can do, and it actually meets our overall zoning bylaws. However, 2106 certainly pushes that envelope well beyond my comfort zone as well. Just doing that math, that's 56% of the requirement. So it's lacking 46%. And even with due respect to the planner, with regards to, yes, you can split that in half. I'm certainly not certain of too many townhomes that do that same type of thing, especially based on the fact that our own bylaws stated at 270, which means for us to consider this under our norm, it would mean a total of 540. Basically, that lot area would need to be the 540 versus, what's proposed on a 300. So we certainly need much more information provided before a decision can be made. But on the outside, at this point, you're short to the plan 46 or 44%. So it's a very difficult pill to swallow. That's all the comments for me.
Thank you, Member Hall. Again, one more time, anybody from the committee have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just a quick little one, please.
Go ahead.
I agree completely with members Hall and Fegan and Bonato. I 100% could understand splitting the lot as is to create a single dwelling on that severed lot. No problem. My concern stems from the substantial reduction in the lot size to then put 2 units on that chunk of land. Quick question for Steve. If there was a semi-detached on those lot or on that lot, could then, I mean, I'm assuming, right, that those houses will then be sold. Now, someone who purchases said house could then turn that house into 2 separate units and have a basement apartment or something of that nature, correct? So that would then potentially put 4 units on those tiny little lots.
It is a very valid concern and question, and it's one that I don't want to push, all of the information to the zoning stage, but there's different things you can do with the different tools. So through the zoning bylaw, you can regulate whether you would permit the dwelling to be further converted and intensified at that time. And my recommendation would be that would be below the threshold of what we would expect to have 4 units altogether. So we would permit the semi-detached dwelling on a reduced lot area if there was justification provided for that through the zoning process. But I think, in fairness, it would be just challenging to address the needs of 4 dwelling units on that size, and I don't think parking could necessarily be satisfied. So, limit that to the 2 units on the new severed lots, and no further new units additional to that. And we could do that through the zoning process.
Okay, that's awesome, because that was a big concern for me, would be figuring like, okay, if someone purchases this house, then it could then turn into a multi-unit house as well, right? So, but yeah, no, thank you very much for that information. That is helpful, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Member Wagner. In fact, very excellent points raised, considering the capacity issues that we have. And so something obviously very important to consider as we consider this application. Okay, so let's turn to members of the public who have been patiently waiting. Jennifer, I believe that we have at least 5 people that initially registered to be on. Is that correct?
I had 4 people register. There is one that has not logged in. But if you wanted to go in order to see, we could start with number 2. I don't know if you have, did you?
I have, would that be Beverly?
Yes, Beverly and Harold.
Okay. Just before we bring on Beverly and Harold, I'll just simply say that for those who are asking questions, I believe just state your name again and your address, and then please proceed with your question or your comments. Thank you.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Beverly Ford Arnold, and this is my husband, Harold Arnold. We live at 125 2nd Avenue West, which is down the street, 5 units down west from the proposed severance. We have lived here since 1987, and during that time, progressively, there has been more and more flooding on down the hill from that area. And our big concern is the fact that if these units go in, there's going to be massive problems with drainage, flooding that will further go down the back lane. I don't know if you are aware of it, but it's sort of at the top of the hill and everything runs down. And we are at the lowest point on the 2nd Avenue West. 121, which is beside us, the Keatings, they have problems, as does Dave Carruthers at 117. We all get massive flooding down the back. We can also get it from the front as well, but it generates generally from the top, which is where that proposed new structures would be. And I don't know the solution to it, but we have to do something because it's getting to the point where we are having water in our basement almost, throughout the year, a lot of the time. There used to be the old garage right at the kitty corner to that lane, and that used to have snow fall off, and I almost got hit with the massive load falling off that roof. And that's another concern. If the roof went in the direction towards the lane, that's a safety issue there, depending if there was a very high roof. It was a very scary situation to be in when suddenly you realize that it almost landed on me. The other issues, there are a lot of children in the area now. There goes in peaks and valleys, but the children ride along the back lane, heads down on their bikes on the wrong side of the road. I've almost been stopped and been hit with a small child with a helmet on, almost smashing into me because they don't even look where they're going. That could be a factor if there are more children in there. They're just, I don't know, they're just problems, and there are already existing problems, and I don't know how we deal with it. But I've enumerated them in a fairly long letter, and I hope you can all read them. And my concern, as you mentioned, Lindsay, as well, is this a ploy to get 4 units into it? And then there really would be massive problems with parking, again, snow removal, snow storage. And then what happens if people block the street? How do we get our garbage picked up? And sometimes we've had people park right in front of the garbage pickup, especially in the winter when there's cutouts. There's very little spots, a few spots for it. But we envision problems. I understand the concern about infilling. There was actually an article in the Toronto Star about a place in Los Angeles doing the same thing. They said it does not affect affordability. They started at 500,000, and within 5 years, they were already selling at $1 million. That is not affordable housing.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mrs. Arnold. Mr. Arnold, I see that you're there. Do you have any other comments that you want to make, or has?
Oh, I'm just concerned about snow removal. It's pretty obvious driving around town now that the planning has been pathetic as far as snow removal is concerned. You see cars parked parallel in the driveway between the sidewalk and the roadway, and it's a disaster. Just recently in Toronto, you see all that disaster from too many people crammed into too small a space, and the parking it just doesn't work. Yeah, I don't know just what to say about it all. It's that 270 detached houses in that little lot is beyond my comprehension.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for logging in with us this evening. You could be assured that we will certainly, the committee, take your comments into consideration. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I think the next person would be Hazel, third.
Yep, Hazel has not logged in. So the next is Michael Williams. I'm not sure if you wanted to. I can go through. Okay, looks like he's logged off.
All right.
So next would be Jane and Dean Belrose.
Okay. Hi, good evening.
Hi there. Good evening. I'd like to say I appreciate all the councillors' comments. Most of our concerns have been brought up, and again by Bev and Harold. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully we get a good resolution to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we again will take all the comments into consideration, and again we appreciate you participating this evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too, as well. Steve, you mentioned at the beginning, at some point during your presentation, that the owner was on, and I just want to afford the owner an opportunity to maybe respond or maybe to address. I certainly don't want to put the individual on the spot, but everybody else has spoken, and so I want to make sure that the owner has an opportunity to maybe make a few remarks if he chooses.
Yeah, I see Jeff is on the call, I think. Jeff, can you hear us? Do you have any remarks you want to make?
Let's see.
If you can hear us, you're muted right now, so you just have to unmute. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, everybody. And I do appreciate everybody's comments, and I listened to them all again. So I've grown up in the town since I've lived here 48 years. I used to go up to, I was a towny kid, used all these back lanes all the time myself, and obviously they've grown over time. So just a couple things, comments and concerns that people have raised. One thing I'm very proud of is there was a concern with the original house that I'm in here now at 220 on Sound Street after the fire of it being demolished. And anything could have been in here. It could have been a developer come in here and tear this house down and use that whole property, and who knows what could have been put in here. I'm pretty proud that I grew up in this town, and this was one of my favorite houses of all times, walking up and down school 7 times a day, going back and forth here. And I'm pretty proud of, and I've heard nothing but very positive comments in what I've done with the property, turning it from 3 units into 6. So that's one of the concerns that I'm not sure a lot of people, this was prior to this, 6 units with trying to have the parking and kids. And so I'm reducing it. I'm proposing to reduce this whole area down to 3 units in here plus 2 semis, which is only 5 units, I'll say. One thing so I'm proud of what I've done here. I have zero intention of trying to turn it into apartments afterwards, like putting in basement apartments. But again, that's anybody in town could be, that is not my intention here. But any one of the Mr. and Mrs. Arnold and Keating, there's nothing to stop them from turning their existing homes into apartments now and having another apartment on there. The concerns with back lane safety and snow, etc. So again, I'm in this area, grew this area. So both Mr. and Mrs. Arnold, Mr. and Mrs. Keating, where their locations are, their houses are down in almost like a bowl. So there's nothing that really can be done. There's not a house that could be built here or taken down that is going to alleviate that. If anything, it's going to allow for less snow being there, because it'll be, and they've also got garages. Their garages driveways don't even front on the 2nd Avenue West. They've got garages and back lane and on the back lanes. And that back lane that reflects them, because the way my property goes, that back lane doesn't affect my property in any way, because it's behind every house west of me after the back lane. So they've got garages in their backyards. So for safety of children running around, they've got garages with zero movement for people backing out of those vehicles and seeing a child. So there's nothing, I think with our infrastructure, we should have things in place with storm sewers and to handle that. Now, I've also lived in many, many houses in Shelburne. I've lived and renovated many houses and lived in them and raised my family in them in Shelburne. Many of them were older houses because that's all I could afford, and I lived in it and worked at it at the same time. And many of those houses still have water issues, had water issues. My son lives across town over by Longbow and Park and all that over there. And many of those houses have water issues also. I don't believe that's as much as from the snow removal. As they mentioned, that problem is all year round. It's not just in the winter. As for the garbage and the parking, I've been here for a while now. I don't see much parking on 2nd Avenue. I do see people, but I see people parking there all through the year. We have bylaws in town to adjust or to to make do that we can't park overnight for those reasons. As for seeing the privacy, again, my son lives in a newer home over at any of these new subdivisions. And I was speaking with him tonight, and he looks out his back window and overlooks 4 yards immediately. 4 people that their backyards all adjoin each other. So the privacy, I think that's in any small town everywhere. From this house now that had 6 units in it, they would be looking into multiple properties around here, whether that house is there or not, those subdivisions. And you can design a house. And again, Steve, I'm open to working with the town on designing things, because on a semi-detached unit, again, if I'm allowed 300 square feet for a single detached home, dividing it in 2, again, will still be the same, to your point, the same square area. And in a semi, because it's narrower like that, you can design a home that I don't have to have all back windows on the second floor. That can be designed to accommodate things. You will need a window, I'm sure, for bathrooms or something like that, so that there's sunlight coming in. And for the lot sizes also, I'm retired now. And I've had multiple houses in town. Like I say, grew up in them, moved around. And the last thing I want right now, to tell you the truth, is a backyard. I'm actually designing is that if it was me living in, I'm looking for somebody that's a retired couple, somebody my age, not that sure that's who, but my personal preference is I don't want a backyard. I just want to have a spot I can put my hot tub and relax and have a patio set out there and enjoy coming. I don't have parties like I used to when I was 20, 30, and 40 and have the amounts of people, the gathering of people. Now, if my family comes over, if I've got enough room, I don't even want grass. I want cement. I don't want to cut grass. So if I've got an area back there that is sufficient enough to put a hot tub and still have a patio set and all that kind of stuff to entertain small groups of people, that's what primarily, if I was looking for a house, that's what I would be looking for right now. I wouldn't be looking for a house for a big yard. So again, that's just my personal preference. And I understand people aren't that, but there are people out there like me that don't want a big yard. They don't want, you know what, people are traveling to the city. This was a small town when I grew up here too. Like I walked down this back lane to go to the old pool hall. I still support every business in town. And I'm glad that, because I was one of the ones, you know, we didn't have enough little pubs or restaurants here or restaurants. And my daughter and son-in-law and 2 granddaughters actually moved away from Shelburne that have been there she'd been raised here and built a house outside of town and moved away because Shelburne didn't have anything to offer. I still believe we have that small town feel, but we're trying to accommodate everything also. And as in your requirements, I've got to put down 5% of the fee towards parkland. Well, you know what, again, that's good. That's the safety of the kids. That's giving the kids somewhere I'm giving the town the money to do the splash pad, to do the skateboard parks, having the skating rinks around over at Greenwood Park, etc. We're trying to accommodate the ball diamonds, places for the kids to go and play. So we're not all running up and down the back lanes. And most of the people up and down 2nd Avenue and south of me on Owen Sound Street, I'm the only one on all of these. There might be 3 total on 2nd Avenue West, and there are 0 on Owen Sound Street south of me that have any parking that abut Owen Sound Street or 2nd Avenue. Everybody uses those back lanes. So, you know, I understand everybody's concerns. I don't think a lot of them have to do with this property or in reality, the privacy. How many houses? You go home tonight, each and every one of you, and look in your backyard and see how many houses you can see for that privacy. And that's almost saying that I'm going to be somebody or me or somebody else going to be a peeping Tom. Right? Like that's not it. We don't have privacy anymore in small towns or big cities or wherever where we've got multiple houses in subdivisions.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton, I just want to make sure that I have given you the same amount of time that everybody had to speak. And I think we certainly have heard your perspective on the proposal. We certainly appreciate that and we thank you for that. And as I mentioned to the others, we will certainly factor that into the decision making. Certainly, we could always agree to disagree when it comes to whether it's good or it's bad, but I'm happy to see that we could have this discussion and it's respectful. So thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for again logging on and stepping up and addressing some of the concerns that were raised. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for your time and listening.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to the committee. I got the sense in hearing from Member Bonato and Member Hall, and certainly Member Wagner and Fegan, that we are possibly looking at a deferral. And so I'll ask, since it was Member Bonato that mentioned it originally, I believe, is there a motion that you want to move or put forward with respect to whether we seek a deferral on this, Member Bonato?
Yes, I would. I would like a motion for it to defer this until further information has been received from the applicant to the planner.
Thank you. And Member Hall, could I put you down as a seconder for that?
Well, and the more I think about it, again, we're talking about which you're putting a motion to defer 2105 or 2106 or both.
Both.
Well, yeah, it would be both, because if we are not making a decision on 2105, then we're not going to be making a decision on 2106 or 06.
At this point, I would be more supportive of putting the motion to dismiss the whole item as opposed to deferring.
Okay.
So I will not second it.
Okay. Is there any other member, Councillor Wagner, Councillor Fegan, or any other member that we have a motion on the floor that would second the motion put forward by Member Bonato? And again, I can't see everybody, so if there is a seconder, if you could just unmute and say so, please.
If I could, Vice Chair, I think I'd be inclined, like Councillor Hall, that personally I'd be more comfortable moving forward with 2105 and stopping. Was it 2106? 2106 I am not comfortable with at all. Deferring, I think, is just pushing this ball down the field that we're going to have to readdress this again. And I don't think the concerns that we have are going to be addressed.
Well, we're in a bit of a conundrum. Maybe Steve or maybe even Jennifer, as to whether we could siphon off, even if that's possible, where we can make a decision on the first application and then dismiss or do something else with the second application. Is that something that's within our purview, Jennifer?
Steve, could you go ahead with that one?
Sure, you can. There are a number of options here. So you do have the ability to make the decision independently on each one. The one thing I would advise is that, and I don't think the committee's considering it, is B2106 doesn't work on its own. So approving it without B2105 would not be workable. But if you would want to approve the overall lot at 300 square meters and not the further division of that into a semi-detached lot, you could do that by approving B2105 and deferring or refusing B2106. And of course, the other options are defer them both or refuse them both.
Okay. Member Fegan, I don't know whether that helps you or not, what Steve has suggested, that we could defer both, or again, if this is the committee's will, we could dismiss 2106 and defer 2105. So I'm just going to go, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if we're able to do that, I would much prefer to see it that way, that we can vote on them separately and take a look and see where we stand in that direction.
Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure, Member Bonato, go ahead.
Sorry, I got a quick question to Steve. If we approve the whole thing, the first one where the 300 whatever is approved, what's to stop a person from putting a semi-detached on there anyway? Nothing.
They'll still have, the applicant will still have to come forward with a zoning application to establish the yards and setbacks, et cetera. And at that time, through the site-specific zoning, if you wanted to limit it to a single detached dwelling or a converted dwelling where you have one building with 2 units inside of it, you could not only adjust the regulations of the zone, but adjust the permitted uses. So you could limit the types of dwellings permitted on the lot if you're not satisfied that the lot is big enough for more than, say, a single detached dwelling.
So technically, we could limit the lot to a single detached dwelling itself, this being the only thing that can be built on there. No semi, no nothing.
Yes, through the zoning process.
Through the zoning process.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear, if we're going to do something tonight, that we know what we can do through the zoning process. I don't want to get mixed up and say, yeah, we approve this, and then turn around and have somebody build what everybody's either comfortable or uncomfortable with. I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're trying to do tonight. So my understanding from the committee is the size of the split of the lots, that they're not the proper size if they go to the semi-detached and we split them again. So if we keep it as one large single lot and limit it to a pardon me?
1 semi.
To a single dwelling on there, we can do that through the zoning process. I just wanted to be clear on what we're trying to do. So sorry, Kyle, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want you to put a motion forward and then not have.
So there's not a motion for it, at least at this point, because we still have yours on the table.
I don't have a seconder, so there's my motion.
No, we haven't finished maybe going around the table just to make sure that. But before that, I guess let me just add this before we see whether or not there is a secondary to this or not. I mean, I guess my concern would be we have the provincial policies when it comes to infills and whether we want to call it affordable housing or just providing housing options. And I'm wondering if the committee were to refuse this and the applicant were to appeal somehow, what position would that put us in based on how the province has looked at these types of housing and has strongly encouraged these types of housings. And so my preference, to be quite honest, would be to defer, get as much information as possible, and then make a prudent decision once we have all the information and then move forward. And so that would be my preference. But again, I'll go around the room just to see if there are any other individuals that at least would want to address or second the motion that is on the table. And quite frankly, if I'm able to do that, I will second that motion. Member Buffett, you'll second it?
No, I would agree with you that I'd like to defer the application.
Okay, so I'll second that motion. And so I will ask, first of all, is there any more discussion before I ask who's in favor? Okay, so in favor of supporting a deferral of the application, both consent applications, to a later date to get additional information so we could make a more informed decision is on the table. All in favor, could I see your hands? I see yes. Jennifer, you could just tell me whether the motion is carried because I can't see everybody.
Yeah, there's four votes, Vice Chair. Yes.
We have 4 votes in favor. Yeah.
Okay, so that's carried. I guess I have to read out the deferral on the record. So after, and thank you everybody, after considering the application of B21/05, after considering the application having regard to those matters under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP.13 as amended, the committee resolves to defer provisional consent, and that was already passed and so and carried. So thank you very much for that. Steve, thank you for providing the report. I think that's it for you as it pertains to this committee meeting.
Yes, there is. I think you may have to read the same statement for B2106 as well, just to be clear for the record. Yeah,
appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so this is for, just give me 1 second here. Yikes. My apologies, I lost it here for a second. B2105. Okay. Okay, after considering the application and having regard to those matters, again, this is pertaining to B2106 under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP.13 as amended, the committee resolves to defer provisional consent as it pertains again to B2106. And I believe that, do I have to ask for that to be in favor again? Jennifer, I see you're nodding your head, yes, okay. So again, for the deferral of that, all in favor?
Lindsay?
There's 4, yep.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the matters that we have for the committee adjustment. Could I ask a motion to adjourn? Member Bonato and seconder, Member Buffett, and that is all in favor. Okay, and that's carried. Thank you so much.
Do we get the mayor back in?
Yeah, I think that Jennifer is working on that right now.
All right, thank you all. Steve, did you adjourn Committee of Adjustment?
I did, thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so we'll call our regular council meeting to order. And as always, we will begin with the playing of the national anthem. And at this time, we would also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Just a reminder to members, if there are any pecuniary interests with respect to a council agenda item, that those interests must be declared verbally and in writing to be filed by the clerk. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes from the council meeting held January 10th, 2022? Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bonato. Any discussion on those? All in favor? Carried. Were there any questions submitted, Jennifer?
No questions this evening, Your Worship.
Okay. All right, so we have one proclamation this evening, as well as a presentation. So the proclamation is for Black History Month, and it reads as follows. Whereas Black History Month is an opportunity to acknowledge and honor the historical and present contributions of Black Canadians and recognize their significant contributions made to Canada. And whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by Black Canadians to our collective economic, cultural, spiritual, social, and political development. And whereas the town of Shelburne recognizes and values the significant contributions and advances that Black Canadians have made and continue to make to Canadian society, and recognize the quest of Black Canadians for equal opportunity and freedom of discrimination in Canada. And whereas the town of Shelburne's establishment of a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will identify ways to eliminate barriers and ensure systemic changes are made to promote equality and inclusion in our community. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in the town of Shelburne, and encourage all residents to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to make Shelburne an inclusive community for all. And our presentation is going to be from Alethea O'Hara Stevenson, who is the president of the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association. Alethea, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you for the proclamation for Black History Month. My presentation has been adjusted slightly, so I'll speak to the 2 slides that I have added that's not in your deck. Let me just bring up my slide. So I've added 2 slides at the beginning just to talk about Black History Month, why Black History Month, as well as the significance of raising the Pan-African flag for Black History Month at the beginning of my slide. So Black History Month was started or came about in December of 1995 by the Honorable Jean Augustine, then MP for Etobicoke Lakeshore. And as the proclamation states, was to honor the achievements of the many Black Canadians past and present, and to celebrate the rich diversity and contributions. And so, of course, the work to recognize Black History Month started much earlier than 1995. In fact, it started early in the 70s by the Ontario Black History Society. Thank you, Denise, for sharing that information. And so effectively in 1995, the motion was passed, or legislation was passed, to recognize Black History Month right across Canada. From a flag raising perspective, I thought it was important to share, because we've had a few questions about the importance and significance of the Pan-African flag. The Pan-African flag was established in the 1920s by political leader and activist Marcus Garvey. And the purpose of the flag essentially was to unify all peoples of African descent, of the African diaspora. Each color of the flag has a specific meaning and symbol. And so the red is simply to symbolize the blood that unites all people of African descent and ancestry. And of course, to shed the blood that was shed for liberation. But the most important note was to recognize the blood that unifies us all. From a Black perspective, again, reminiscent of the existence of the nation state of the Black community. And the green, of course, is the abundant and natural wealth of Africa. But more importantly, I like to look at the green as the future of hope and, of course, of resilience. What does the flag represent today? It is more about unity, pride, community, and a way of recognizing and honoring the many contributions of Black Canadians, and exactly as the proclamation outlines, the contributions and just honoring the legacy of Black Canadians, past, present, and future. Of course, the flag is well recognized globally, and if we look just to our friends in the States, it's recognized for Emancipation Day, MLK Day. Right here in Canada, it is recognized for a number of events, including Emancipation Day, which we do celebrate. I just wanted to share with the team the journey that we've been on together. And I thought, let's take us back to the beginning of how the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association was established. And I just lost my light. In February 2019, the town of Shelburne essentially paved the way. You were the first council, or we were the first council to recognize Black History Month in Dufferin County. And then following that, in 2022, a number of students from Centre Dufferin District High School accompanied me to the county to have Black History Month recognized. And so we were able to officially recognize Black History Month across the county in 2020. Following that, we raised the Pan-African flag for the very first time at the town of Shelburne, which was another huge milestone and accomplishment at the Museum of Dufferin, as well as the courthouse in Orangeville. Carrying on Black History Month in 2021 and flag raising ceremonies as well as virtual ceremonies. So I won't go through every single detail. I just wanted to highlight some of the key dates. On this slide, I just wanted to share, I think it's important to share and celebrate collectively our journey together as we started to celebrate Black History Month. You'll see some of your faces on the display here, including the flag raising ceremony that we've done previous years at the Museum of Dufferin, right here at the town of Shelburne. You'll see some of your faces here. And across the county, the town of Orangeville, as well as Amaranth. So this is just a celebration of all of our success and achievements together. And we couldn't have done, BCCDA could not have done this without council support. So I just wanted to take the moment to acknowledge and thank everyone for being on board. In terms of municipal support, again, this is an acknowledgement to all of the municipalities that have signed up to support the organization and to support Black History Month, whether it's through donations or recognizing Black History Month through proclamations or flag raising ceremonies. From a community organization perspective, again, great support from community businesses and organizations. And I just wanted to take the moment to recognize their efforts in our journey to recognize Black History Month. Likewise, from a business perspective, some of our very own business in town have been very supportive of the organization and the work that we're doing right across from Black History Month to other events year round. So I thought it was important to recognize their efforts and contributions as well. One of the major things that I'd like to highlight is the work that we were able to do in partnership with the Museum of Dufferin. And it, in fact, was curate a display in partnership with the museum to recognize Black history, starting with William and Mary Gaunt, who I'm sure you've heard myself and of course, Deputy Mayor Steve Anderson talk about quite frequently. William and Mary Gaunt were one of the original settlers to Dufferin County, specifically Melanchthon. And so there is now a display at the museum featuring them, their picture. Along with that display, you will see a display that will highlight some current leaders, including the work that Dufferin County Canadian Black Association is doing. There's also a display with the current leader, Deputy Mayor Steve Anderson, as well. And I'm highlighting this fact because this is something that will be captured in our upcoming Black History Month celebration in partnership with the museum. But also to highlight the fact that because this display is now at the museum, we were able to bring a number of individuals from the community, both in Shelburne as well as outside, to visit the museum to see the display. And the significance of this is not only we were able to share the rich history of Dufferin County, we were able to share the rich history of Shelburne by representation from our Sikh community, the Muslim community. Individuals were able to see the artifacts on display at the museum. So lots of great work being done. And again, each and every one of you are part of this journey. So I wanted to take the time to make sure that I acknowledge and celebrate the journey together. Last but not least, on this slide, we have upcoming events. So February 1st, of course, we have the flag raising ceremony at the town of Shelburne. Jennifer or Denise can correct me with the time. I have 10 a.m. here. I'm not sure if it has been confirmed from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. So we'll clarify that at the end. And of course, we have the flag raising ceremony at the Museum of Dufferin. And on the 27th, we have the virtual Black History Month celebration in partnership with the Museum of Dufferin, the town of Shelburne's DEI committee, as well as the County of Dufferin. And so the virtual celebration, I will encourage everyone, once the link is available, to put it in your calendar and come out and support the event. It'll be aired virtually on the county's YouTube channel. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. So thank you once again for your ongoing support. And if anyone has any questions, over to you, Mayor Mills.
Great, thanks, Alethea. Thanks again for all the great work that you and your organization does. I know it's, well, you pointed out that Shelburne sort of paved the way in the county for proclaiming this, and I do sincerely think that's something that this council can take a great amount of pride in. So, Denise, I saw your hand up. Are you confirming the time?
Yes, Mayor Mills, thank you. The flag raising is at 9 a.m. on February 1st, and it's at the flagpole at Town Hall.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions for Alethea? Councillor Bernardo and then Deputy Mayor Anderson.
So I'm gathering that on February 1st, 9 a.m., you'd like to see some of us out there with you at the flag raising. Would that be all right?
Absolutely, that would be more than welcome. And of course, social distance protocols in place. I'm not sure what the guidelines are. Perhaps Denise can speak to that.
Certainly through the mayor. Currently, we expect on the 31st of January that the outdoor gathering limit will increase to 25 from 10. We did ask members of the DEI committee to confirm whether or not they would be attending, and some have. Apologies, we just haven't sent the formal invitation yet to council. But certainly we're hoping that between the committees and council members that will be at 25. And the other option, similar to what other communities are doing, is some people may just need to remain in their car to observe and celebrate the day.
So if I can confirm, it's 9 a.m., not 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 9 a.m.
Okay, I'll wear my warm winter gear. I'll see you.
Maybe a little warmed up by then, but Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Mills, and to Councilor Bernardo. I'd be happy to come pick you up in my favorite car, the Corolla that you love so much. I'd
rather walk, Steve. I'll walk.
I figured you would say that. I just want to echo the comments that Mayor Mills made about the excellent work that DCCBA is doing under Alethea's leadership. But one of the things I wanted to highlight now is and Alethea touched on it briefly, is the fact that the town of Shelburne's DEI committee is also partnering with this in this event, and we have some members here that are part of that committee, Councillor Fegan and Councillor Lindsay Wegner, that are part of that committee that is doing tremendous work. And so I just wanted to take that opportunity to thank them, and I'm glad to see that this committee is being very productive and that they're partnering with you with respect to this celebration. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jennifer, just a quick question. Do we have to authorize the flag raising request by resolution?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure. All right, so with that, can I have a motion then just simply to receive the presentation? By Councillor Buffett, second by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thanks, Alethea. We will see you in a week and a day, I guess.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. Okay, on to council inquiries. I have one, but if anybody else, Councillor Bernardo?
Yeah, a couple of them. I'm wondering if the town can send out a reminder to residents, when you blow the snow, don't blow it into the sidewalk after it's been cleaned. I've been walking down some sidewalks where they blow the snow in and pretty well pile it, and you're walking back over what's been cleaned. I think that it's pretty easy to turn the chute to a different direction. There's no need to fill a sidewalk. And then my second comment, can we maybe remind the Snowmobile Association that sidewalks aren't for snowmobiles? Because I'm going down some sidewalks and unfortunately, I'm seeing snowmobiles riding on the sidewalks. The road is more than adequate for them. They don't have a need to be on sidewalk where pedestrians are walking.
Yeah. Okay. Is that something we can get out in some messaging? Denise, Jim? Yeah.
Certainly, we have done a number of blasts about winter maintenance and what's permitted and what's not, and asking people to, read that information. We can certainly remind them. Similarly, with snowmobiles, it's the same. That's something we weren't aware of, so thank you for sharing that it's not appropriate for motorized vehicles to be on our sidewalks. So we can send something out on social media tomorrow. We can also contact maybe the snowmobile club just to remind their members that part of their protocol is to only use authorized trails or designated corridors.
Okay. And I'm just thinking too, for any members of the local media that may be on tonight, if we could ask for your assistance in that regard to maybe put a plug in for us, just to remind people. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
This is, thank you, Mayor Mills. This is not an inquiry. It was a mistake that I made. And I want to apologize publicly for leaving out the fact that on the D&I committee that our CEO, Denise, and other staff members like Carol are participating and doing an awesome job. And so I just wanted to make sure that they were mentioned as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fegan.
Yeah, I've got a question. I think this is probably for Jim. I was approached by a business owner on Main Street. Apparently she received a notice from the town where she was instructed that she could not move snow onto the boulevard. And this is going to be a long, convoluted story, so I apologize in advance, but got to get to the point. Her shop is actually in front of accessible parking, and this shop owner does her best to clear not only the sidewalk, but also the area on Boulevard for the accessible parking space. A lot of her clients need that space in order to get to her shop. The question that she had, and she brought up a point that I know that we have our town staff clearing the sidewalks, and typically as they're doing that, I believe they're using the snow blower, and they are putting the snow from the sidewalk onto the boulevard. She's simply moving the snow from the boulevard in front of the accessible parking onto another portion of the boulevard to clear that area. So my question is twofold. Jim, I know that you've mentioned before that there are areas in town where we've got the staff clearing the sidewalks, and then they'll go in by hand and clear more spaces like certain mailboxes or things that they need to have access to. I'm wondering is there a possibility that we can get staff to go back at the accessible parking spaces and make sure that those spaces are cleared so that them being accessible parking spaces, they are accessible? And the second would be, if she's getting a letter from the town, I'm kind of wondering why that would be when she's doing a service to the rest of the town.
Through your worship, we don't go out and put an access from the street line to everybody's place of business. If the business owner wants to do that, that's great. They can put a little access area to get through until town staff can usually get there within a week to do a full removal where you push the snow out onto the parking spots overnight, load it, remove it, and take it out to a snow dump where we leave it for melting in the spring. We did in this area, we did relocate the accessibility parking spot closer to the intersection itself, where the trackless can actually access it. So right off of the corner, just to make it easier for accessible parking. The second part of that question, that letter stems from a misunderstanding, I would say, with the business owners. We did try a little experiment there where they can have some outdoor seating, which we normally wouldn't allow over the course of the winter. Realizing that this is a neighboring property next door. The issue wasn't that it was cleaned out in the boulevard area of the sidewalk, but the snow was actually pushed out into the parking stalls, which was a concern for us, blocking it off. If somebody came down the parking spots, it would have ran into that pile of snow. So that was the issue there with that. We just would rather have it on the sidewalks in that boulevard area until our staff can get to it and deal with it with our tracklesses in a manner that we can address it all at the same time, and there's nothing left protruding out into parking areas.
So there's no issue then if she's clearing space for the accessible parking to put it on the other sides of the boulevard itself?
Through your worship, no, as long as it's not pushed right out, blocking a parking area. We did have some photos from staff overnight where it was right out fully with a vehicle backed up behind it, where it could be an issue there. If somebody did hit the pile on one side, they could end up damaging the vehicle too. And it wouldn't just be a soft stop with snow. You'd be into a vehicle there too, so.
Okay, I appreciate the extra information. I wasn't aware of that. As I said, I only have one side of the story, so certainly I can share that with the store owner as well. I did see Denise had something to add to that as well.
So thank you. Through Mayor Mills, just to clarify, I was actually the one corresponding with the business owners and clarifying what the requirements are. As Jim has noted, the issue is that snow was put onto the road. And we provided a link to our website on why that's a problem. We certainly appreciate the effort that people take in clearing. We wanted to identify where it can be placed and where it cannot be. At the same time, we also had an opportunity to share information with the BIA on the same issue, and also wanted to ask people to not apply. So I've got the floor right now, direct salt, and that to leave the salt and sanding to the staff. But we did provide the link to the product that we use, which is 90% sand, because that has more traction. And there were issues with only salt, not only environmentally, but when it melts, it becomes a puddle, and that freezes very quickly, which can create even a greater slip and fall experience. So I'm happy, Councillor Fegan, to send you the response that we provided probably over a week ago to the business owner. I know Councillor Wegner was copied on that, as was Mayor Mills, because they were on the list. And we'll get that to you ASAP.
Councilor Bernardo, you're muted.
Make sure I shut up once in a while, I guess. Sorry, Denise brought up a point. In my walks around town, there are residents that put salt onto the sidewalks. I notice it's on Canfield as well as on Robert Street. There's direct salt, and I know I have to pick my dog up because it hurts the dog's paws when we're walking. That is not allowed, you're saying, on our sidewalks?
Through the mayor, so with the downtown, they have a responsibility to clear, and some business owners have been very gracious, and I know they're trying to do their best in applying salt. And what we've advised that is something that the staff do in terms of salt and sand, and we gave, as I said, the product. We would advise that homeowners as well, by applying salt on our property and melting it, it's, again, while it's appreciated and understood why they're doing it, it's not advisable. A salt sand mix is much more appropriate for traction and melting. And so we use a 90% sand and a 10% salt mixture. I guess we can send something out as well, telling people why a direct applicant, and again, your point that it's also very problematic for pets who may dip their paws in 100% salt mixture, or may ingest it and think that they're licking water. So we'll add that to the list of information for the community on how they can actually help us.
Okay, thank you very much, Denise. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Wegner.
Thank you. Just extremely quick. Just wondering, this question I guess would be for Denise. Is it possible to utilize the little information box that's in front of Town Hall for some notification for Black History Month? I know that we're not quite sure what what it's going to look like with the hall, the town hall being open. So that will reduce, any displays that we have inside the building. So just wondering if we could just do something on that. We don't have any plays going on, so it's not being utilized for anything like that. So I'm more than willing to, put something together or speak with, I know Alethea is extremely busy, but I might be able to chat with her a little bit and see if she knows any youth from the high school that would be willing to put together a little information package that could be displayed in that location. Maybe it's something to do with, the contributions to politics or municipal type like Jean Augustine or Lincoln Alexander, something of that nature that could be displayed either once a week or for the entire month?
Certainly, we can just look into if there's any other information that's scheduled to be posted, and certainly accommodate something on Black History Month, whether it's for the full month or a week. Just to let you know, through the DEI committee, staff are working with the designated representatives with respect to what's going to go in the free press, what's going to go in social media, and a number of another, including the radio station campaign. We're also going to reach out to the Shelburne Library to see what initiatives they may have planned as they transition back to maybe more people within the library. So certainly tentative, yes, just let me confirm with my colleagues what we can do in terms of space assignment, all of it, and how long, and we'll be back to you shortly.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just very quickly to follow up to Councilor Wagner's question about the display. I know that she did that a few years ago upstairs, and that was very well done. Because of the restrictions and access to the building, what I'm thinking is you could still do the display, but then we could do like a video of the display and then have that circulated on social media. So in the event where we can have a lot of traction into the building itself, people are still able to see the display and all the work that went into it. And during the course of the month, that could be disseminated throughout the town's social media. So that's something to consider. But as our CEO said, when we meet with the D&I committee again, that's something that we could talk about.
Okay. All right, and the one inquiry I had, I noticed that earlier this afternoon, there was a reminder put out on our social media platforms, reminding residents to stay off the stormwater ponds. Just wondering if that was sort of, preemptive, or if we've had an issue with people venturing out onto those ponds again.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. I'll start and then Jim can interject as well. We certainly understand and appreciate how being active is so important to the members of the community, and they may see the stormwater pond as an extension of a park or a park-like setting, but they're not safe entities for skating on. We have signage, and there's a reason for that. So Jim, if you could just explain why stormwater ponds and the depth of some of them, which are over 10 feet, could actually be very dangerous. It's something that we're going to be stressing. I know our colleague municipalities are as well. And we're going to try to really focus on redirecting people to the outdoor pads that we're soon to have all open, as well as our new skating path at Highland Park. So Jim, if you can provide the technical flow issues that we're so concerned about, that would be fantastic.
You're muted, Jim.
Sure, through your worship. Yes, all stormwater ponds aren't created equal. There are dry ponds that basically throttle water. So they'll collect it, throttle it, and basically empty out again. And then there's other stormwater ponds, the wet ponds, and they hold a certain amount of water all the time, but that does fluctuate. So if you freeze at a lower level and then you have a large snow melt, that the influx of water can crack the ice, make it unstable. Some of these ponds are up to almost 2 meters deep. So for a small child, that's fairly substantial. That's like just about 6.5 feet. Usually those are fenced off, like the Highland Pond on the south end of the development over there. We haven't assumed those ponds yet, but we had to make sure that all of those are signed with our typical year-round danger notice, as well as danger thin ice keep off. That the water, the way the stormwater pond works, there's always some kind of current movement through there if you have any kind of melt or rainfall action. So that just adds to the danger of it. And unfortunately, in other municipalities, there have been fatalities over the years. So generally, as rural municipalities like to keep you off that, as tempting as it is to play hockey on or whatnot.
Sorry, Mayor Mills, if I could just add to the type of product that's actually flowing, because it is a stormwater pond, and road debris and road salt and sand also makes it not a water quality engagement that we want people to be experiencing. It's not healthy to be ingesting or touching some of the product potentially, not that it's, you know, environmentally damaging, but it is a concentration that wouldn't normally be in a normal pond that's fed by a basic stream. So that's among the other reasons why we're very cautious. And it's also a regulatory issue for us with respect to how we manage our stormwater ponds.
So it's not a matter of the town sort of being a killjoy. There are legitimate safety concerns that warrant the restriction on those bonds.
Yes.
Okay, anything else for inquiries? Okay, moving on then, our first item on the regular agenda is a report from the town planner regarding sidewalk cost estimates to run along County Road 124. Steve, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you, Mayor Mills. I put a few quick slides together just to highlight some of the information in the report. So I'll put that on screen. A few meetings ago, I can't remember exactly when, there was a request by council to get some preliminary cost estimates for this. There is a gap in the sidewalk network along the county road between the new Fieldgate subdivision and the Tim Hortons Plaza at 124 and 89 and the Greenbrook Village subdivision to the north. So this report summarizes some of the considerations and options for potential future sidewalks to close that gap, as well as a preliminary cost estimate. You're familiar with the area, but the change that's underway right now is obviously concentrated in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Main Street and County Road 124 with the Fieldgate subdivision under construction. As part of that subdivision, there is a new sidewalk that's been installed on the north side of Highway 89 from County Road 124 east to the new entrance road, Ojibwe Road, into the subdivision. And then of course, there'll be sidewalks all throughout the subdivision on at least one side of all the roads and on two sides of the main roads. So I haven't shown those here, but external to the subdivision, there's also a sidewalk that will be installed. It's been approved on the east side of 124. So from the intersection at 89 and 124 to Anishinaabe Drive, which is the entrance to the subdivision off the east side of 124. And then to complete the sidewalk network down to the school in the southwest, Centennial Highlands, there's been a county approval as well for the sidewalk between Highway 89 and School Road, connecting to the existing sidewalk on the north side of School Road. And then there is existing sidewalk as well west of the intersection from Centennial Street over to 124 and then west of Centennial Street into town. As part of the Greenbrook Village subdivision in the north, Wansboro Way does have sidewalks on either side of it coming into the signalized intersection. But then of course you can see the gap, you know, between there and the area south. So the cost estimates that we provided have indicated a couple of different sections. So on the east side of 124, to close that gap, you'd have to build a sidewalk basically from Anishinaabe Drive all the way up to Wansboro. There are pedestrian heads on the signals there, and pedestrians could potentially cross and use the sidewalk on the east side of 124. On the west side, it would take 3 sections of sidewalk to complete the gap down to Main Street. So from Wansboro down to Steele Street, Steele's down to Industrial Road, and then Industrial Road down to Main Street. So the cost estimates are in my report. This is with input from SBA Engineering on some of the anticipated engineering costs. So to do the first section on, or the section that I talked about on the east side from Wansboro Way to Anishinaabe Drive would be in the order of $495,000 plus HST. And sorry, I skipped over the west side costs. So those 3 sections that I highlighted on the west side, we've categorized them independently so that, you know, if it was some combination of a couple of sections on the west side and a section on the east side to achieve the same objective, you can kind of do the math on how that would cost out. But to do all the section between Wansboro Way and Main Street would be about $724,000 plus HST as a rough estimate. So quite a length of sidewalk. The challenges of putting sidewalk along the county road is that it's almost entirely rural profile. So obviously from just north of Main Street up to Wansboro Way. It's got ditch, no curb and gutter. That ditch varies in its slope, and it's got gravel shoulders. It's not really designed for the addition of sidewalks like an urban roadway. And then, of course, there's the jurisdictional challenges with it being under county jurisdiction. County has advised that they don't have any plans to put sidewalks along their roadways, that's normally a local municipal responsibility. So some of the variables that can affect this cost through more detailed design would be, the regrading of the ditches, stormwater management requirements, and ultimately restoration of the shoulders and the ditches to bring them back to where they are now. After the sidewalk goes in, utility impacts, there's overhead hydro, there's hydrants, there's Bell and Rogers pedestals, etc. There's some signage that would be impacted, street lighting. There's only street lighting at the two intersections, north and south, and no street lighting in between. So with sidewalks, you really would need to have street lighting to properly illuminate the sidewalk. We have included that in the cost estimate, but it is an initial estimate. Reinstatement of private driveways. There's a number of private driveways that would be crossed by the sidewalk, and those would have to be restored. There may need be some property taking, depending on if the county urbanizes the roadway at some point. The slope of the ditches doesn't leave enough room for sidewalk in some sections, so you might have to widen the property, which would mean acquiring some land to widen the highway. Pedestrian crossings, pavement markings. The Besley Drain flows under the county road just north of Anishinaabe Drive, and that would require either a pedestrian bridge or an extension of that culvert. And then, not one of the major costs, but in order to address any removals, there would need to be some restoration in terms of landscaping and tree plantings. So at this point, this is really just for council's information. I know it would be desirable to have these sidewalks as soon as possible, but they're one of what potentially could be many different transportation improvements that need to be considered throughout the town. The transportation master plan process is underway at the county level, and following that, the county will, or the town is also budgeted to do a local transportation master plan. And so we're recommending that this be one of the pieces of information that would be considered through that broader process, both at the county and town level. And then, you can consider the costs for these sidewalks in conjunction with other transportation related improvements that may be needed in the town for a complete picture. So that's, there's a bit more information than that in my report, but I'll pause there and happy to take any questions should you have any.
Thanks, Steve. I have Councilor Bernardo and then Deputy Mayor Anderson.
So the county is not willing to put sidewalks on any of its roads from what I just heard in your report. Am I correct in that? So when they did the southern bypass in the town of Orangeville, they turned Riddell Road over to the town. Would they be willing to turn part of 124 over to the town so that it becomes a town road? Would that be what we have to do at some point in time at the county level to get a sidewalk on that road? And then I'm hearing now that there's a somewhat similar situation with people having to walk on County Road 11 when they're going to walk down to work at Blue Mountain Plastics or some of the other industries we have. I've heard that at a meeting I went to the other night, that there's a safety issue there as well further south on County Road 11. And then just another comment, if we build a trail on the opposite side and we got some private property, would that be also a potential?
Yes, and in fact, to your last question, the county has consistently advised us that their preference would be not to have sidewalks or trails in their right of way, because as I say, the road isn't designed properly to have a sidewalk. In this case, it's a rural profile road, but nevertheless, through the Fieldgate development, because of some of the constraints, certainly at the plaza there, where it's very tight to the right of way, they did find a solution to design and install the sidewalk along the right of way, like right within the county right of way, while maintaining and regrading those ditches. So that's really what the cost estimates provided are based on. we haven't had conversation with the county about potential changes to jurisdiction of the roadways. I think that's a bigger, there's a lot of factors to weigh in that, you know, in terms of how the road functions, carrying traffic and trucks, and whether it's rightfully a local road versus a county or regional level responsibility. And that could be a conversation that gets a little more attention through the master plan processes, but sidewalks is really just a small part of that conversation. There's more involved in that.
Just before I jump to Denise, just because I don't want to lose my train of thought, to Councillor Bonato's last point about the trail, I'm assuming that the cost estimates that are provided in your report are for proper sort of concrete sidewalk installation and not, you know, more of a trail concept.
That's right. They're a standard 1.5 meter AODA compliant sidewalk, and they involve the lighting as well. With a trail, there's a variety of standards that could be considered, anything from a granular surface to asphalt in various widths, and whether it's maintained in the winter or not. The issue that can arise from that is, for example, the school boards have certain standards that need to be met for something to be designated as a student walking route. So if there's an expectation that any of these sidewalks would be used by students for walking to and from school, then they would need to be properly illuminated and surfaced and maintained in the winter. So, you know, trails are another option. And within private property that hasn't been investigated, that would involve consultation with the affected landowners. But those are alternatives that could be considered.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, you know, we have to put every option on the table. I mean, the key element to this is making sure that, you know, people have a safe way to navigate on foot. And, you know, I don't think, you know, that could only ever be achieved through traditional sidewalks. So, I mean, I agree with you, Steve, that, you know, this probably should be part of a larger discussion, but, you know, while we're having that discussion, I think we should make sure that we kind of explore every possible option. Denise, and then Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Sorry, you actually just captured what I was going to provide in terms of trail reconsideration. We had a comment at the DEI committee, and there is a potential that we could look at connectivity through a trail program, and ensuring that it's surfaced, whether it's similar to what we did at Fiddle Park, where we did almost like a chip and pave resurfacing using clippings. And as long as it's fully accessible and it's maintained, it creates that corridor. So you've captured that, and it's something we'll also be looking at through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as well. Not simply sidewalks, but connectivity.
Okay, great. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. Yeah, whether it's a trail, a sidewalk, I don't care if it's even an escalator that extends all the way down to Lawnsville. The fact is, we need something, and I appreciate that in Steve's report, you know, we could wait for the county to urbanize the area or put it as a part of the transportation plan. I could tell you that I have raised this at the county level. They've made it clear that this is, you know, if we're going to lay any sidewalks, that would be sort of municipal. They wouldn't probably even share in the cost, and that we would be responsible for maintaining it. And they share the concern that I believe that we all have, that it's dangerous territory there. It's like Frogger, if you played that video game there, but at night, imagine at night. And we know that people are walking down that road to get down to No Frills, Tim Hortons, our youth in between, or whoever. There's just a number of individuals, and it's just an accident waiting to happen. And I believe that whatever we decide to do, whether it's trails or sidewalks or otherwise, that we have to be really decisive on this, because it's just a matter of, it's not if, it is when. And if we could act quickly on it, then I think that we should, especially considering that Fieldgate is already extending the sidewalk from 89 along 124, as you mentioned, on the east side. To me, the timing just seems right to either work with them, which is what was suggested, I mentioned before, if there's an opportunity to work with them and just to further extend the sidewalk, it would make it safer for everyone. Because when that place is built out, you could rest assured that you're going to have students who are going to be traveling on there, who will connect with their friends that live in the Lakeview subdivision and vice versa. And so to me, this issue is very time sensitive. And though I appreciate there's an opportunity for a master plan, I have no idea when that's going to be and when that's going to come to fruition, whether the county is going to urbanize and we might be able to have this as a larger discussion, as you said, Steve. And not to say that, you know, these things are not important, but I just want to emphasize once again, I think these things are time sensitive and we need to be seen as acting very quickly on this. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? No? Okay. So the recommendation is, you know, simply to receive the report and then to consider the needs and options along County Road 124 through further review and consideration as part of the Transportation Master Plan. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's carried. Okay, next up is the budget adoption bylaw. Carrie, I don't think there's probably a need to go through this unless anybody has any questions. It's just the formal adoption of the bylaw to approve the budget that we essentially approved by resolution at the last meeting. So can I have a mover and seconder to receive the report and for leave to be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 3-2022, which will be a bylaw to adopt the estimates for the sums required during the year 2022 for general water and sewer purposes, the corporation of the town of Shelburne. Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next is the notice of motion that was presented at the last meeting by Councillor Wagner. I guess I'll start by asking if we have a seconder for that motion. Okay, Councillor Bernardo, thank you. Now that that's formally on the table, Councillor Wagner, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Mills. Yeah, it's basically, I mean, I guess I would hope that it's pretty straightforward with what I said in the motion. I just feel that unfortunately there's you know, people within the community and across Canada that don't have the luxury of having paid sick days. And, you know, we are requiring them to be honest enough to stay home and quarantine, whether that be for 5 days or 10 days. And, you know, they won't be paid for those days when they're home. So in order for them to test to return to work, they, you know, there are also companies that don't have either the stock of the rapid antigen tests or the ability to receive some for their employees. So, you know, we have community members having to pay for that out of their pocket. So I feel that, you know, if our government can do a buck a beer, they can potentially look at ways to either subsidize the funding for rapid antigen testing or work with the companies who are providing those tests to limit the cost as much as possible so that it's affordable. You have a family of 5 that are, you know, having to take 1 or 2 tests at minimum to return back to work or school at $20 a pop, and it adds up very quickly. So you know, for me, I would really love to see, you know, both the provincial and federal government you know, work at mandating some form of you know, base price that would have to be implemented by all retail sector, you know, for community members to purchase the rapid antigen testing.
Okay, great. Councillor Bernardo, do you want to speak to it as seconder?
Yeah, the reason I'm willing to support this is I agree with the motion and Councillor Wagner's motion on the sick day pay for, I'd rather at some point in time, see this COVID disappear. I think it's going to be ring around the rosy if you get sick, and you, especially if you're one of the low paid workers that work in customer service or retail or other places, and you don't have the wherewithal to sit there at home. You have to go to work because you have to support family, pay rent, or whatever the reason, and turn around and bring that disease back into the workplace. That's just stupid, continual stupidity on the part of not having those sick days being paid for. The rapid antigen test, it's also for retired people. Not all of us have that ability when we're retired to have somebody pay for us to get those tests. If I want to get the test, which I happen to pick up, for testing purposes, I have to pay the $20 as well as a retired person, which is not realistic. That's something that the government, if they're willing to provide it to schools and whatnot, they should be providing it to everybody, that we at least have one or two provided to us free, so that we have the ability to test. They did it at liquor stores down in the city. I didn't see them do it at the liquor store up in Shelburne. So I think that if they're willing to do that down in the city, they should be willing to do it throughout the whole province. So I'm willing to support this motion.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you. And just very briefly, I wholeheartedly support this as well. I know in other provinces, they were handing out these tests at grocery stores for free. So why we haven't been able to organize that here is mind-boggling. And Councilor Bernardo, I'll say to you, you are lucky if you were able to get a rapid test, first of all, to even get one. And secondly, to pay even $20. I mean, I paid once $18, and then the next time I went to another store, I paid over $30. And so there seems to be no cap. It's the same test that I purchased for $18, and I went to another spot and it cost me $30. And I wouldn't be surprised if it went up further and further, because the issue is supply and demand, and it drives the cost up. And so I think the timing of this motion is perfect, Councillor Wegner, and I'm sure that the community, not just in Shelburne, but beyond, would appreciate that. So thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Hall.
Again, I support the motion overall. I would like just to make mention, though, that the Dufferin Board of Trade for businesses is supplying tests based on the availability that they receive. So the provincial government did go through the process where basically workplaces could get tests and then obviously give them out to their, employees. However, I know with the latest period, there's been somewhat of a, as Deputy Mayor Anderson mentioned, supply and demand. I know that the much awaited federal government sending out to provinces the tests has not really been seen at this point yet. But just to mention, there are others within the community that are doing what they can. And, I do appreciate the Dufferin Board of Trade with their efforts in this too.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, Councillor Hall. I know, my small business is in town rather has availed itself of the Board of Trade's program. As you mentioned, they're kind of backlogged right now just because of tight supply issues. But certainly up until very recently, that was a fantastic program, and they were able to deliver those tests to small businesses in our community very quickly. So by all means, they deserve a lot of credit for that. Councillor Wagner, thanks for bringing this forward. I find it, kind of odd in a sense that, since you brought this forward, I've heard in the US at least that the federal government has organized, a program whereby, as I understand it, anybody can request these tests through a website, and they'll be shipped to them, within a matter of days. So, I mean, if the US federal government can organize something like that, considering the population that they're servicing, one would think that, we could probably do the same here. Anybody else before I call the question? Deputy Mayor?
Just very quickly, as you mentioned that, Mayor Mills, also in the United States, I believe that the government is providing N95 masks for free.
Yeah.
for all of the residents. And so I just wonder, Councillor Wegner, whether that should be implemented or part of, not only because, they're telling people to do away with cloth masks, it's not enough double mask, all this other stuff. So let's utilize the procurement abilities of the provincial and the federal government to say, listen, in addition to providing these tests for us, provide us with high quality masks so that we could actually wear them and not have to wear like a triple and quadruple mask on my face just to feel protected. So I don't know if that's something that you'd want to add to the motion to consider, but I think it would be good.
Yep, I would totally be willing to add something like that. I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but if someone has a way to word it, to throw it in there, I'm all for that.
I'm going to leave it to Councillor Hall because he's pretty good at words.
Basically, it's not a complicated issue. All you have to do is add to the motion that the federal and provincial government provide, and was it KN95 masks to all residents within the province at no cost.
Are you okay with that as a friendly amendment then, Councillor Wegner?
Yep, definitely.
All right, Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I would just put it, basically where you're talking in the very first paragraph, talking about demand requirement for antigen test and N95 masks to safely return to the workplace regardless. It's the best place to place it in the overall written, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor then? That's carried. Okay, excellent. Any new notices of motion for this evening? Okay, communications. Is there anything there that anybody wants to deal with? Councillor Wegner.
Yes, thank you so much. Just really quickly. Number 9 is sort of the government speaking to allowing certain provisions, I guess you could say, or recommendations of changes for more authority for planning submissions, decisions, and whatnot from town staff. Do we have any plans to move forward with that?
Denise, do you want to speak to that yet, or?
With Steve not here, we need to assess what some of the adjustments would be with respect to some of the goals that they've outlined in terms of expediting processes. It also has to be, I think, something we hope AMO will comment on with respect to how municipalities would like to address that. Some of the planning controls that you have are, I believe, things that staff would support are very strategic, and you don't want to relinquish those decisions. And also, we think it's important to understand what affordable housing and density would mean with respect to how you as council would want to approve that and evaluate it in terms of the process. So it is a general direction, but we still need to do more work to understand how the implementation of that would be seen from the perspective of council. So I'm assuming we'll have reports coming forward. There'll be far more comprehensive review. And again, we think AMO will be critical in providing feedback to all municipalities.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I guess just another quick a question for number 10. With some of the new sort of reduced restrictions, has any word come down whatsoever if they're going to be sort of re-implementing non-emergency surgeries? We know, of course, that even though a knee replacement might not be considered an emergency, not having that knee replacement for a considerable amount of time can cause a lot of discomfort and pain, on a person's daily life. So just wondering if anything has come down the board that we as council haven't been privy to yet, with regards to, hopefully seeing some of these considered non-emergency surgeries happening again.
I haven't heard myself. I'm not sure if anybody else has heard anything directly. If not, I can try to make some inquiries this week through the hospital and see if they're looking at opening those surgeries up again. I would hope that that's the case, as you say.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't look like anybody else has heard anything either. So I'll make some inquiries and report back.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, anything else from communications? Can I get a motion then to receive those items? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? Carried. And a motion for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you all. Stay warm.